Welcome to Connections. I'm your host, April Healy, and I'm sitting with my husband, Blake Healy. He is the director of Bethel Atlanta School of Supernatural Ministry and author of The Veil. Hi, babe.
Hi. Funny meeting you here.
Welcome to Connections.
I'm so happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. So you just finished writing your second book.
I did.
Profound Good.
That's it.
So what's the heart of your second book about?
Yeah, so my first book was really just about my experience with growing up as a person who's seen angels, demons, and other spiritual things, for as long as I can remember. And so that book was really very much about kind of how I learned that what I had was a gift, how I learned to kind of come to terms with that, and how I, over kind of, at least at the time, what felt like a very long period of time, got comfortable with actually using that to bless other people. And so after I finished that book, it was a really long process, and there was one element that I got at the end of The Veil that I knew I had a lot more to say about. And the way that I described it in The Veil, if I remember correctly, is that when I was younger, especially kind of from the age of 12 to the age of about 22, it was I had a hard time sharing the stuff that I saw with other people. And part of that was because I was young and I was just learning how to express it, and I was growing in my understanding of it. But one of the main things that bothered me was that anytime I saw something in the spirit, anytime I saw an angel dancing in worship, or I saw what the presence of God was doing in a room, I would feel something in every single thing that I saw that I didn't feel come out of my mouth when I was sharing with other people about the things that I saw.
Yeah.
And I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't quite identify that thing precisely until much later. And so I talked a little bit about that in The Veil, about how what I felt like that really was is just that how God's goodness, how his nature is reflected in everything that we see in the spirit.
Wow.
And so this book is really about diving into that one idea, that one topic about how seeing the spirit teaches us about the nature of God's goodness. And so we kind of focus in a little bit on my personal journey with learning how to express that, learning how to understand that, and not only understand it, obviously not fully, but understand it enough that I could share it with other people. And one of the kind of truths that I started with as a way to begin to express that idea is, a lot of times people ask me, hey, is seeing in the spirit difficult? Is that hard? You know, especially if you see people that are dealing with bad stuff or have emotional or spiritual wounds or are under demonic oppression or whatever that may be. And I always tell them that, even though I have compassion for people that are under demonic torment or being attacked, that's not the most painful or difficult thing that I see. Honestly and truly, the most difficult and challenging part of seeing in the spirit is seeing how much of God's goodness he pours out on all of his people, and how much of that goodness just goes unclaimed because we don't know that it belongs to us or don't know how to access it.
Yeah.
And so this book is not all about every possible way that you can get that. It's not a comprehensive guide on that, but it is, for me, gets to what for me personally was the absolute core of how to begin to access the full measure of God's goodness, or at the very least, how to learn how to expect his goodness, and also ultimately where that goodness actually comes from and what it's rooted in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really good.
Thank you.
I can't wait to read it. So when you said the saddest thing that you see is the goodness of God, not being able to be taken, or accounted for, how would you say, as people and as Christians, people that love Jesus with all their heart, how can we grab a hold of that?
I'll zoom in on something specific, just because as a good example. Like, so for example, when we pray, every time I've ever seen anyone pray, something happens. There's always something that happens. There's a double negative, but it's never that nothing happens.
Yeah. And you're talking about in the Spirit.
Whether it's praying in tongues in the Spirit, or they're just praying, asking God for something, or releasing protection, whatever it might be, it happens. And so just take one example of, like, I can think of numerous times I've been in like a church service where, maybe the pastor gets up and says, hey, is anyone struggling financially right now? We'd love to pray just the blessing of heaven on your finances.
Wow.
And so every single time, 100% of the time, I see that provision enter the room, come flooding into the room. And sometimes it looks like a picture of just like literally piles of money, like it's, like almost like a cartoon kind of thing, like it just all just comes pouring in. But I think, again, this is an easy example of sometimes our expectations are what affect whether we receive that or not, because maybe someone's in a financial pinch and they're really hoping to get like a check in the mail. And I've heard numerous testimonies of people having a sudden unexpected windfall, or someone sending a check in the mail, or things of that nature. Sometimes I see just that kind of out of nowhere, out of the blue provision being released, but also sometimes I see ideas for businesses, ideas for inventions. Sometimes I see the grace to manage one's money in a way that they just haven't known how to do before. I see the grace to break off just bad habits that we've learned with money, or bad beliefs that we've built up about money. And again, this is just one example. The same is true for healing, for relational restoration. Any of the good things that we ask for, God releases it, and releases it abundantly.
Yeah.
But if we don't know what to look for, and this is giving some of it away, but if we don't recognize that without learning who he is and his nature and how much of his nature he's inviting us into, we actually, it's almost like if we don't learn his nature, we can't understand the way that he's saying what he's saying and the way that he's doing what he's doing, if we're not truly familiar with who he is.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, that's awesome. So how would we understand his nature better?
Yeah, so this is really what the whole book is about, at least from one angle. I in this book I can outline a little bit more of how people who may not see in the Spirit yet can practice and pursue the gift of seeing in the Spirit. And that's not the only way, or even necessarily the best way to get to know who God is, but it's one of many, many ways to get to know who God is.
Yeah.
To get to understand his nature. Again, ultimately, it comes down to pursuing him, to whether and that's going to look different for every person. Some people that might be really investing in a prayer group. For some people that might be going to a school of ministry. For some people that might be just getting more involved in our church environment, or things of that nature. But for me, the key, and really what the kind of the heart of this whole book in particular is. And this is, for me, this is the foundation, the beginning, the key to the whole thing is, what is God's intention towards me? How much is he inviting me in? And how much of who he is does he want me to know and to understand? And what does that actually look like? And honestly, the entire book, there's a lot of little things along the way. But to me, and this is honestly the part that I'm a little bit nervous about, is the whole goal of the whole thing is to make one point.
Yeah. And
it's, for me, sharing one specific experience, actually, where I had an experience that, to me personally, revealed the quality and the nature of, and the level to which he wants to know and be known by us. And, everyone's going to have their own experience with that, because our God is that big and that much in love with each of us individually. But I hope that in sharing that and kind of building this entire book to share this one thing, that I can invite people into the same experience and their own version of that experience. And that would be my most genuine hope for this book.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Well, Blake, thanks for joining us. I loved having you, especially as a spouse. It's very fun.
That's my favorite part of this.
It's very fun to interview you.
Yeah.
And I honestly can't wait to read your book, and I can't wait for everyone to read your book. It sounds, just as you're describing it, I just want to know the Lord better, and I can't wait to read your book to get another version of who he is.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm really excited about this one. I really enjoyed writing The Veil. This one, I feel like I'm writing about the thing that's probably the most important to me. And
Wow.
so I'm both excited and terrified to see if people are able to catch that and receive that, and very excited to give that to folks. Nervous to see if it will if I did a good enough job in releasing it out there. So I'm excited. And
it comes out February 5th, right?
February 5th. You can pre-order it on Amazon right now. Profound Good. And I'm excited. I'm excited about sharing it with everyone.
I am too. Well, you guys, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks so much for listening to Blake Healy, my husband, and the amazing director of Bethel Atlanta School of Supernatural Ministries. And I can't wait for you guys to join us next time.